Hello and happy, beautiful day to you. Today, I want to talk about the topic of fear and suppressed fear because so often people are messaging in questions, about fear, of feeling stuck in a place of fear and unable to get out of it or suppressing fear. It is something that I see that impacts people all of the time. And so there are a few keys that you'll want to know about fear and about really shifting it because so often people, especially if people are headstrong and they're really feeling, like they want to be determined and they want to move forward and they want to be thinking in a positive way, what will happen is they just suppress fear. And we even talked about that even on the last episode where I worked with a beautiful volunteer, Heather, that very thing where a person can suppress guilt or suppress fear and it can keep them stuck. And so the insight that I want to share with you is this, is that first and foremost, everything that the mind does, it does it for a reason. And so often people are fighting their own mind where they want it to do something in a different way. And yes, one thing we need to do is we really need to establish new neural pathways. That is key. Again, it will be key to really train your brain to work in a different way. Additionally, though, it will also be key to unlink negative things that are stuck in your mind, because if they're not unlinked, then the problem can persist. And let me give you an example. A woman who was so stuck in fear reached out. She had this big fear of dying and didn't know why. She felt like, part of her felt like, I don't even care. Like she was trying to do everything she could to just resolve that she doesn't care. She doesn't like it. It was just something that was really affecting her, the getting sick and dying and getting sick and dying. It was just so ingrained in her mind that it was basically driving her crazy with this feeling. Now, what had happened was this, is that she didn't even realize it, but somebody gave her, like basically about a year and a half ago, somebody gave her a gift as a plot in a cemetery with her parents. And it was meant to be a nice gift. Now, this is the problem, is that, and by the way, she appreciated it, and it wasn't for any time soon. It was just in her future. It was supposed to be a thoughtful thing. Now, this is the problem, is that if you think about a gift for a moment, what emotions do people link up to a gift in childhood? Well, what they link up is feelings of what? Gift. You get a gift from your mom or your dad or somebody. What are the feelings? Oh, I can't wait to open it. Oh, it's going to be exciting. What is the gift? Like, what do you, like, so there's these feelings of excitement and anticipation to open a gift as a child. So the problem is that when somebody bought this for her, this plot for her, they called it a gift, which then associated. So it's like, oh, this is such a sweet gift. What a wonderful gift. So what happened is all of those feelings of excitement and wanting to open and wanting to use got linked up to cemetery plot, the plot in a cemetery, which made it her brain then what? Excited to use that. So on a subconscious level, she kept feeling this extreme fear of dying because the other part of her mind was like, oh, it's a gift. It's a gift. I can't wait to use it. She didn't link those up on purpose. It was emotions that were linked up to this very thing. So in other words, if they just called it a thingy instead of a gift, it wouldn't have linked the emotions. And so, and by the way, this may seem like an odd situation, but I can tell you all of the time, I'll see people who will say something like maybe they are healing from cancer and they go to get rid of the cancer completely and they're healing. Or maybe they healed from something in the past and they go, oh, well, that injury was such a gift. And when they call it a gift, what happens? Their mind wants it again. So then they can have this fear of being injured again that comes really big. So in other words, the problem is that gift, in this case, gets associated. Gift has, what feelings does it have? Excited to open, excited to want, to have, to use as a child. So even in the childhood mind, in the subconscious mind. So if the cemetery plot was just called, oh, here's a thing for you. Here's a thing for you in the future, not a gift. So I've seen people before, by the way, they'll take a crisis, like a plan for, like a backup plan or a crisis plan or something like that, and call it a gift. Well, what happens? That gets linked together. So it's like the brain on a subconscious level wants to have a crisis. It's the plan. But people don't realize it's happening. And so what happens is when we link up something that we don't want with emotions that are otherwise a positive thing, like something we do want, like a gift, it creates a subconscious error in the mind. So said another way, if you look at my own injury, I had grown up with a feeling that it was good to die for others. Like that's what you should do. That was the ultimate sacrifice. I grew up in religion and with a belief that says, we should be willing to die for others, or you should really die to save your family or your loved ones or whatnot. So that was a very strong thing in my mind. And so basically, if you've heard my story before, my injury, like part of my thing and connected to what was going on with me during my injury was that, the events of 9/11 happened and I felt like I should go die to save others. It was linked up in my mind. And of course, it created all of this fear and expectation of dying, but it wasn't just 9/11. It was all different types of situations. Like it was like my brain felt like it needed to go die for others because then it would make me a good person. And if I didn't do it, then I wasn't going to be a good person. And so I had these suppressed fears that were going on that didn't make any sense. And by the way, I was so good at suppressing fear that I didn't even realize it was there. Like I was going through life, I was fine. I would have not even known until I really started tuning into my subconscious mind and realizing what was stored up in my subconscious mind. I was so used to suppressing fear. It was just my norm. Now, what is my point? Is that all of the time, people will link up things that really affect them at a deeper level. And even if you think about, the volunteer episode that I did a couple weeks ago, which was about, don't hug the lion. Okay. And it was exactly that. Is what happens is, somebody can want to hug somebody and want to love somebody who ultimately also simultaneously isn't safe. What happens? They'll have a feeling of expecting to get hurt. And so that fear, so they'll have a fear and it'll feel unsafe to love. And so my point is that at a deeper level of the mind, all of the time, these mixed emotions are happening, and it leaves people in a place where they're feeling afraid and they're suppressing fear, and it is affecting them at a deeper level in the subconscious mind. And so it can feel like we're not in control of our own minds, like the suppressed fear or trying to think positive, so to speak. But at a deeper level, all of these emotions can be happening. And I've seen people, by the way, who are generally very happy people, that ultimately what's happening is something in their mind at a deeper level is impacting them. And I'll give you another example is this, and I've seen this before many times, where somebody's going through life and maybe they lose a parent. And let's say they lose their mother or father, or they pass. And there's a part of them that really wants to be with their mother or father. They feel like, gosh, I wish I could just connect with them. In which case, part of them, on a subconscious level, wants to die, to be with that person. Now, of course, the other part of them wants to be alive and live and doesn't want to die. And so that can create that fear of dying, or a fear of getting sick and dying, or whatnot. So my point is, those mixed emotions at a deeper level are really key, and they can create so much fear and stress, or fear of the very thing that you're not wanting, and it can feel completely irrational. Like, for example, the woman that I mentioned with the cemetery plot, she never would have known that was even linked up, because it wasn't something that was even in her awareness, and yet her mind suddenly had this big fear of dying and death. And I've seen other people where they create a crisis plan, a plan that says, okay, well, they're creating their funeral plans or whatnot, and that's fine to create their, I'm not saying don't plan. I'm saying if you call it a gift, then your mind will associate whatever that gift is linked up. Now, of course, if somebody feels like there's a gift and they don't want gifts and they don't like gifts, that's a different story. So my point is just simply, when we link things up in the mind, the emotions can get connected, and they do, and it creates information or links in the mind that do not make logical sense just because two things happened at the same time. And another way to think about it is like a wedding song, for example. If somebody gets married and they hear a song at the same time, that gets linked up. Or unfortunately, a breakup song, where maybe somebody had a breakup and then they're listening to a song, and anytime they hear that song, it reminds them of all of those feelings of the breakup because it gets linked up in the mind. And so then what happens is, of course, anytime they hear that song, immediately they think of, oh, there was that breakup. Oh, there was that hurt. And so that can keep coming back. But the same is true, not just with songs, but with everything in life. We can get everything linked up at a deeper level, so it just doesn't make logical sense. And so what's important, the important takeaways from this is first and foremost, is that you'll want to make sure that when you're working with your mind, don't be logical, okay? So yes, I love logic, and be logical, but in a different way, meaning that emotions aren't always logical in a normal logical sense. And another example is that maybe you've heard somebody say something like this. Maybe you've heard somebody say, I feel guilty, but I know I shouldn't. So where somebody feels bad and feels guilty about something, even though they, quote unquote, know better. And so that logical piece is one thing, but the emotional piece is another. And emotions can go against logic, to where you might even feel like a relationship. You feel like logically, you shouldn't be with somebody or shouldn't be around somebody, and you know it logically, and yet you feel a sense of emotional connection. And so, again, you want to just pay attention and notice what's true for you. And the reason that I'm answering this is just because all of the time I get questions coming in where people say, look, I've been stuck in fear and I don't know why. And what happens is ultimately there's some type of miswired mind programming at a deeper level that is occurring, which can happen towards guilt or towards, punishment patterns, or towards miswired, where something is miswired, or they link up a crisis plan as a gift, and then before you know it, they're experiencing fear about their future or whatever it is. And so the biggest thing you want to know is that if you're experiencing any type of emotion and your mind is doing something that you don't want it to do, whether it's depression or fear or upset or anger or hurt or whatever it is, that in order to rewire it, you'll definitely want to establish a new way of thinking, so new neural pathways, and then also deprogram the old miswired programming to create that change. So just food for thought. And ultimately, if you have been in that place where you feel like your mind is driving you crazy or an emotional pattern is driving you crazy, to calm your emotions and look at it with an open mind to see if you can discover what it is at a deeper level that's creating that problem. All right. So that is today's quick IQ episode, quick insight. And as always, please do hit the share button on this episode. The more that every single person feels empowered with their mindset and their emotions and their health and their happiness, it is key, because so often people have struggled with mental wellness, emotional wellness, feeling good, or struggled in fear with depression and all of these things. And the things that I have seen people change, everything from, severe depression to chronic illness and everything in between, and relationships, and just what we are capable of as human beings is absolutely incredible. We just really need to understand how the mind works and really genuinely rewire it. So just food for thought. And again, please do hit the share button, and please do have a most wonderful, incredible rest of your day. And I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. We'll see you there.